You know that feeling when you start reading a letter or an email, and you can tell just from the first few words that something is seriously wrong? Well, that's exactly what it's like reading the Apostle Paul's letter to the Galatians. It is famously harsh, but that shockingly angry introduction actually holds the key to the entire world-changing message. So let's start by just seeing how angry this letter really is. So how jarring are we talking about here? Well, to really get it, you've got to see it side by side with how Paul normally kicks off his letters. It's not like he was just having a bad day. This is a completely different approach. I mean, look at his letter to the Romans on one side. It's warm, it's expansive. He's practically gushing about how much he loves them and wants to see them. And then you've got Galatians. It is clipped, it's defensive, it's cold. All business, no warmth whatsoever. It's night and day. But honestly, it's what's missing that really screams at you. Paul just blows past all his usual warm-ups. There's no thanksgiving for their faith, no praise for their community. He doesn't even give a shout-out to his coworkers. Nope, he jumps straight into defending his own authority, making it super clear that his apostleship comes directly from God, not from any human being. So you gotta ask, right? What in the world could make Paul, this guy who's a seasoned leader and is usually so pastoral and gracious, what could make him come out swinging like this from the very first sentence? Well, believe it or not, the answer is hiding in plain sight. It's a single phrase, just 4 verses in. The one key that unlocks this entire angry letter and Paul's fury is something called his apocalyptic framework. Now, I know what you are thinking when you hear apocalyptic. Our minds immediately jump to fire, brimstone, the end of the world. But for Paul, this wasn't about doomsday prophecies. It was a lens, a way of seeing and understanding all of reality as this cosmic struggle between two opposing ages. So from this point of view, humanity starts its story trapped. The scriptures call this situation the present evil age. And that's not just Paul being dramatic. It describes a reality that's governed by very specific, very hostile forces. This age is basically a system. It's defined by the power of sin, by the internal opposition of what Paul calls the flesh, and by the influence of cosmic enemies. And where does this entire system inevitably lead? Death. That's the operating system humanity is born into. For a long time, the expectation was that there would be this single, clean break in the future, a day of the Lord that would wipe out the evil age and kickstart the new one. But the apostles preached something totally radical and unexpected. They said the death and resurrection of Jesus didn't just promise a future new age, it actually cracked history open, creating this overlap where the new age has already broken into the old one. And this idea, this great overlap, becomes the single most defining experience for the early church. It creates this profound, constant tension. It's basically the core of their whole new reality. So this means communities of faith are living in this really unique in-between space. It's like they have a foot in two different worlds. They're citizens of the new age that has dawned, but they can still feel the gravitational pull of the old, fading age. You'll hear it called the already but not yet, and that's the perfect way to describe it. And this fundamental conflict, this is the engine driving everything Paul says in Galatians. He's constantly setting up these stark choices. Are you going to operate by the logic of the flesh or by the spirit? Are you living in slavery or in freedom? Is your identity built on what humans think or is it found in Christ? Every single argument comes back to this one choice between two worlds. Okay, so once you see the world this way, it totally changes how you think about salvation. It's not just that it's bigger than we might think. The starting point is completely different. You know, we tend to think of salvation as this deeply personal thing that starts with me. But for Paul, no way. It's cosmic first. God didn't just save a bunch of individuals, he launched a full-scale invasion to reclaim the entire fabric of a hijacked creation. So the church isn't some club for people who got saved, it's exhibit A that a new world order has already begun. And this is a huge flip from how we usually think about it. Paul works from the outside in. First, the cosmos is reclaimed. Second, that cosmic event creates new kinds of communities, the church. And it's only inside those new world-changing communities that individuals are truly transformed. See, it reframes everything from a personal problem to a cosmic solution.
Okay, so now that we have this apocalyptic key in hand, let's go all the way back to that angry introduction, because now we can finally get the stakes. Paul isn't just a little annoyed. In his mind, he's watching a prison break in reverse.
He doesn't see them as, just exploring a different theological opinion. He uses the language of military desertion. In his eyes, they are defecting from the army of the new creation and basically re-enlisting with the old oppressive regime. And for Paul, this is just baffling. Can you imagine rescuing someone from a slave camp only to turn around and watch them willingly walk right back towards their chains? That is the level of horror he feels. To him, it's an act of cosmic treason, a rejection of the very freedom that defines this new age. And that is why his language is so severe. The stakes could not be higher. Any teaching that tries to drag people back into the dynamics of the old age isn't just a harmless error. It's a damnable lie. And he says it twice, just to make absolutely sure they get it. So when Paul says he's not trying to please men, that's not just a throwaway line. It's a declaration of independence. All the social approval games, the reputation building, the quest for applause, that's all part of the currency of the present evil age he's been rescued from. His only allegiance now is to the new creation and its king. Because his identity is completely secure in this new reality, he is totally liberated. He's crucified to the world, as he puts it. He's dead to its systems of value and approval. And that freedom is precisely what allows him to speak the hard, confrontational truth that he knows the Galatians desperately need to hear. And this whole leaves us with a pretty provocative question, doesn't it? If Paul's framework is true, that we are meant to be outposts of a new creation, living right in the midst of the old one, then what parts of our world, of our assumptions and our values, are we being called to desert today?